Whether it was Montana's native people or the homesteaders who willingly took on Mother Nature,
I don't know how they did it. I really don't know how they lived out here.
the need and demand for agriculture built and cultivated a way of life that no matter what the conditions, they had to find a way to survive and thrive in Montana's harsh elements. And this past February wasn't anything to write off as an ordinary winter month. Montana's farmers and ranchers felt the impact on every aspect of their lives.
The cold temperatures and the snow sort of came a little later in the winter, came right in the time period when people were calving, so people have issues with frozen ears, frozen tails, just having to work and deal with cattle in deep snow, having to clear snow to create places to calve and feed. Those have been the primary impacts we've heard about so far.
This is what makes or breaks us, and our calves are the most important thing. We just got to make sure we have healthy calves that are alive and stay healthy.
January in some parts of the state would have been a great month for calving. We didn't have as extreme cold. We didn't have as much snow yet. And here in March, and February and March is when we seem to have been hit the hardest. And so I think that's the challenge, is people have pushed their schedules later, or many people have pushed their schedules later, trying to find better weather, better conditions to do it in. And Mother Nature has sort of worked the opposite way, at least this year.
And it wasn't just ranchers battling the elements this past February. Montana's farmers were also hit hard.
Our soil temperatures over the winter under the snow got down to about 22 degrees in that top 2 to 4 inches, and we froze to 40 inches this year. Well, last winter, even as cold as we had snow cover through quite a bit of that, and so it didn't freeze to 40 inches. This year it did, and we didn't have snow cover near as long. We really never started our snow cover until about the 1st of February. And I think we're pretty lucky just to get it at that point when the temperatures really started to turn cold, so it helped insulate some of these plants. And so we'll just have to see when they break dormancy as to what it's gonna look like.
Despite the record low temperatures and long-lasting snowpack, the month of February wasn't all bad for agriculture. The snow helped to blanket the soil, in turn giving crops like winter wheat a bit of protection from the freezing cold. And according to the USDA, snow protectiveness in February was a bit behind last year, but nonetheless still provided some much-needed protection. 28% was rated at excellent. That's behind last year's 45%. Reports also indicated 69% was good to fair in 2019 compared to last year's 44%. And although it will be hard to tell until the snow is completely melted, the latest USDA crop progress report is indicating that winter wheat is faring slightly better than last year. 14% is currently sitting at excellent compared to last February's 8%. In the good to fair section, 2019 is looking to sit at 84%, whereas last year was at 87%.
That snowpack was actually quite beneficial with respect to temperatures and insulating the ground, insulating our crops.
Another aspect to take a look at when it comes to agricultural impacts from the month of February is how the snow and cold has affected insects. Now you might be thinking, how could anything survive a month of below freezing temperatures, right? Well, a lot of it depends on the insect species.
Any kind of delay in plants to grow, because the plant needs to grow and produce flowers, because the insects need to feed on the flowers for nectar before egg laying.
If the plant does grow a bit slower, it can have an impact on certain insects. However, some of these pests are pretty well adapted to Montana winters, no matter how harsh they are.
Last year we had some strong winters too. So sawflies are very abundant in some places, big sandy, and so instead of, we all expected that it will go less, but we had a high infestation of the sawfly.
Although we're not dealing with quite as impressive of a snowpack as last year, the moisture is going to have its impacts as we look forward into spring, both good and bad for agriculture.
Moisture is one of the key important role for not only insects, even for the plants too. They need moisture. The insects, for example, they need a moisture. If it is a dry, probably that will kill the insects. So they need a moisture and for emergence, because they have to break their diapassing and the wall, and they have to come out and they feed on the plants.
The take-home message is yes, the cold in February did have an impact on some insects. However, others will more than likely thrive with the increase in moisture. By now, I hope that you have a pretty solid understanding of the month of February and its impacts on agriculture throughout Montana. But now we must shift our attention slightly and look at the lingering effects of the month of February. Things like frozen soil and long-lasting snowpack.
Looking forward, I mean, obviously, we still have a lot of moisture, and it's Montana, so we have cold temperature. We're not really done with snow until May. Of course, we'll start dealing with higher elevations. I think at this time of year, we begin to worry about the melt and how fast that water begins to move off of the elevations and move down. Also, ice jams in the rivers and creeks. Flooding, wet, mud, those are the issues I think that we worry about more for the spring.
So keep an eye to the sky this spring and your Storm Tracker weather app handy, because we all know there's no such thing as normal weather here in the Treasure State. I'm Jason Laird with the Montana Ag Network, and there's a look at the month of February and its impact on Montana's leading industry.